How have you made a rude person's day worse? I watched a lazy shopper park their grocery cart right behind another person's car instead of putting it in the cart return. I got out of my car, ran up and moved the cart and put it behind her car. I then ran off and watched her have to get back out of her car since she couldn't back out. And then finally proceed to put up her cart the right way. I felt like a champion of the people. I was working as a manager in a big nightclub about a year ago. I don't wear a uniform, but have a radio and run the security team. The venue has a great smoking section that looks out onto the street. One night the venue was packed, so I did my usual room making sure that there were no problems. However, it was too packed to walk through the smoking section. So I walked down the street instead, but could still very easily see into the smoking section. One guy stares me down, then calls me over, and starts swearing at me for no reason and telling me that pieces of shit like you could never even get into a venue like this. He obviously had no idea I was the manager. However, I didn't want to have security get into a fight inside with him. The guy kept telling me he would punch me out etc. and was clearly trying to look macho to impress someone. So I agreed and told him to come and meet me outside and he could even have a free swing. He puts his drink down, takes off his jacket and storms outside. Once he walked outside, I walked back inside and told security not to let him back in. The look on his face when he realized I ran the place was priceless. And then the realization that he couldn't get back into the club was amazing. It was the easiest and most fun removal I have ever done. Was in theater quite a few years back, some action flick. I think Jean-Claude Van Damme, and there were two 16-year-old or so kids in front of me who were, in turn, behind a group of smaller kids, say 12 or so. I was alone. The wife hates action movies. I quickly noticed that the two older kids were duck edgy with the younger ones, kicking their seat backs, throwing popcorn at them, flicking spit at them. The works. The theater was crowded so the little guys couldn't move. Finally one of the douche-teens leans forward and, I think, flicked one kid's ear. When the little kid turned around to glare, flicking douche-teen says, "You got a problem with that? She dead?" His friend guffaws. When the flick master sits back, I haul off and give him a decent slap upside the head, knocking his noggin into his friends. They both turn and half jump out of their seats, and then pause when they see me. I am 6'2", 225 pounds. I stood up and said, "You got a problem with that? She deeds?" They looked at each other and then turned to sit back down. I said. "You sit there, and I'm gonna make you as miserable as you've been making those guys in front of you." They shuffled on out of the theater. The younger kids all turned and said thank you. So, TLDR slap some teen bullies. Became action hero. I work in local theater, and we have a lot of rude, awful women who are part of local ballet schools come through our venue who are the mothers of the dancers. Once this woman rang up wanting seats to an almost sold out ballet performance that had been on sale for 4 months the day before the show, and did nothing but abuse me for 5 minutes because she left buying them too late. Whined about how she shouldn't have to pay for her kids. Whined that we should get a bigger venue. It seats just under 500. Then put me on hold while she rang 3 of her relatives to see if they wanted seats too. She was positively awful. The seats I was about to sell her were the only ones in the theater left. And they were good seats. While I'm on hold, a grandma of one of the ballerinas comes to the desk and asks if we have any seats left, as she'd been in hospital and couldn't buy them earlier, but said she'd understand if we were booked out. I put the phone with the on hold music down and sold this old lady the last seats for the show, and gave her an invite to our next year's dance season for her granddaughter and herself, so she'd know exactly when all the important dates were coming. She thanked me over and over, and she's now one of our regulars and brings her grandkids to our shows. 2 minutes after the old lady leaves, the itch on the other end finally takes me off hold and says she wants the remaining seats that we have left. I tell her sorry, we've just sold out while you had me on hold, I'm afraid. Better luck next year. Anything else I can help you with? She was choking with rage on the other end of the phone. It was fantastic. I work at a retail location that does returns strictly only with tags on the clothes. There was one customer who was exceptionally rude to our staff. She called both women working dumb bitches, which pissed me off. She came up to the register telling me she'll probably return all the things she's buying and is just trying to impress her friends. So I took all the tags off the clothes when I was bagging everything. I bettered the world that day. When people are rude to me at my fast food job, I practically overflow their cup with ice. I'm a little passive aggressive. Op. You are glorious. This guy walks up to my work and asks, "Hey, kid, where the duck is Voodoo Donuts?" I'm 27. He swore in front of a child nearby and was loudly smacking his gum. Instead of sending him to Voodoo Donuts, which was only a few blocks away, I gave him directions that would lead him under the Burnside Bridge where the homeless, the prostitute, and the drug addicts congregated. Trashy. Jerry Springer guest-looking young lady at Toys R Us on Black Friday tried to cut in the massive 90-minute line and threw a fit when she was told to go to the end of the line. She yelled at the employees and threw her products into the face of the security guards as she was told to leave. I started a slow clap, to which she replied, shrieking, "Duck y'all." I love that the slow clap was all you had to do in this situation to make her day worse. Brilliant. Came out of the supermarket one day to find that someone hit my car. A stranger told me the person who hit my car got out, looked at the damage, and parked at the other end of the lot. I went to where the car was parked and confirmed, paint matched, it was the car that hit mine. Flattened all 4 tires and left a note on their windshield telling them to have a nice day. That's flat out fantastic. I volunteer at my university. Safe walks and all that jazz. We are required to report suspicious and illegal activity. Witnessed a woman driving a Mercedes-Benz across a lawn to bypass the parking gate, tearing up this gorgeous lawn. Being an ex-landscaper, and mad at some rich itch being too cheap for parking. I am not amused. So we reported it to the parking authority. They show up while the chick is still getting crap out of her trunk, box her in, and start writing a ticket. She ended up driving away over a curb, peeling her bumper off in the process. Made me kinda happy inside. A woman in her mid-50s cut in front of my daughter, 2 years old, and I in line at Panera. I was getting her a cookie and was in a hurry as I was dealing with a 2-year-old. I said, "What is wrong with you? How are 70 years old and you still don't know how a line works?" She was silent. The best part of this is the subtle jab at her age. That she'll take to heart. Not me, but when I was working at a car dealership we had a bunch of cars get their wheels stolen one night. A police officer was in writing a report and a lady came in screaming that the cop was blocking her from getting to the service drive-thru. She was screaming at the top of her lungs, creating a huge scene. The cop calmly walks out and moves his car, comes back in and finishes his report. Then he walks back out and drives his car to the end of the street and parks. The lady comes out and gets in her car and leaves. He pulls her over for having her wipers on without her headlights on. Her wipers on without her headlights on. This is illegal. I work in customer service and have no shortage of asshole customers. I often find that a nice big smile and a "have a nice day" at the end of an insulting customer's rant makes them angrier than any insult I could have thrown back at them. Waiting in line to vote today. I stood next to a Nation man and we engaged in a conversation about the excitement surrounding this presidential election. He struck me as a very well-educated person with interesting insights about this election season. When it was his turn at the registration desk, the woman there asked him if he spoke English and if he did, would she be able to understand him. I spoke up and said that he spoke English a whole lot better than she did and wasn't anywhere near as rude as she is. At a pedestrian crossing on a major road in one of the wealthiest parts of town, The little man goes green for me to cross, however I see one of those 4WD vehicles that has never been off-road and I can tell the driver isn't going to stop. Sure enough, he runs the red and also he can turn into the 7-Eleven 50M beyond the crossing. He would have happily run me down just to get to the convenience store a few seconds earlier. He gets out of his car with his wife and several kids. I walk up to him. Tell him he almost held me. He is selfish and a few other colorful tidbits too. He is speechless throughout. I finish up by pointing to his kids and saying, now explain to your kids why you've just been abused in this manner, and head on my way. Some douchebag in a Humvee decided to park in a handicap spot at a Kroger. I was young at the time and out riding with my dad, a repo man, in a repo truck. He towed the Humvee to a parking spot on the opposite side of the parking lot. We waited till the owner came out and looked around in disbelief. She thought someone stole her car. My dad drove up to her, rolled down the window and said, "Are you okay, miss?" Woman said, "My car was stolen." My dad replied, "Well, maybe you shouldn't have parked it in a handicap spot," and drove off. Reported a hit and run today. That's pretty rude. And I'm sure they won't enjoy the call from the police. I used to work a gift shop right in front of a parallel parking only street. So many people hitting the cars around them. All the time. Almost all the time they pretended it didn't happen. So I would wait. Go outside. Write all the info down and what happened. And leave it under their wiper blades. So they would know exactly what happened if there was even a tiny dent. Every year, my dad would wrap a month's worth of trash as gifts. He made them look all nice and professional. He'd drive to the bad section of town, where the major mall was in town, with all the presents in the bed of his truck. He'd go grab a coffee at the shop across the street and wait for the hoodlums to steal the Christmas gifts. I was crossing the street and some guy tried to run over me. Then he stopped his car to yell at me. I was a law school student at that time, and cited some imaginary section of the state vehicle code at him. He stared at me for a few seconds, then said, "Shut up, girl," and drove away. When I was working a shitty job in my younger days, a customer was upset that he had to wait in line like everyone else before being able to make his purchase. He actually said, "Do you know who I am? I own hotels." To which I replied, "Well, sir, I'm sorry, but this isn't Monopoly. This is Krispy Kreme." He was not pleased. At the end of a long commute home, after a hard week, I went to Miller's Cookies store just before closing time. As I walked up to the counter, not 5 feet from it, some guy ran from behind me and tried to cut in front of me. The girl working there insisted I was first. "Thank you." Outraged at what that guy tried to do, and noticing there was not much cookies left, I said, "Hi. I'll take absolutely everything you have." Cost me close to $60, but it was so worth it. I was walking down the street smoking a cig, when I see a woman eating on the sidewalk patio eyeballing me. I was still 30 feet away and she was waving her hand in front of her nose and pointing for me to cross the street. Instead, I walked past her and managed to cut a nice audible fart right next to her as I kept walking. I was proud. By watching their face after telling them, "May the rest of the day be as pleasant as you are." When people are rude to me in the drive-thru, I bend their straw so it gets a crack in it. So later on, about halfway through their drink, their straw stops working. I was a motorcycle courier through uni. People throwing lit cigarettes out the window were an occasional hazard. It was a son of H to take one in the face, and once I got one land inside my jacket as I was heading down the freeway. If I was filtering through stopped traffic and saw one, I used to be flexible and fast enough to stop next to it, pick it up and throw it back through the driver's window onto the back seat. I did that a few times and a couple of them I managed to tell them I thought they'd drop something. Whenever I am getting tailgated on the highway, I like to turn on the windscreen washer water jets so the water sprays back onto the car behind me. It's a lot like spitting on them, and if I'm already speeding and not in the fast lane, then they have no reason to tailgate. Just the other day I was at a Chinese buffet and the 3 people in the booth next to me were questioning the waitress, she appeared to be Asian Hispanic, about voting for the president and who she planned to vote for. She had trouble understanding them and communicating that she could not vote. They immediately began taunting her that she shouldn't be here if she couldn't vote. That she didn't even know who the president of the United States is. And then took a picture and said they would post it on Facebook. I later found out the waitress was on a school visa and couldn't vote, but was unable to convey that to them. After the waitress walked off, one of the girls at the table, the one who took the pic, looked up and asked me where I worked because I looked familiar. When I replied the local university in the social work department, she commented that she had recently been in my office to apply to our program. To which I replied, yes. I remember you, and I'm also on the admissions committee, followed with a wink. The color drained from her face and she knew she was screwed. Calm as a rick. Anytime someone rude comes to the movie theater and orders popcorn, I always give them a sheet ton of kernels, so if you have a sheet ton of kernels in your popcorn, be nicer. Edit. Apparently you like the kernels. You are sick duck. So I worked customer service for 4 years. This is my favorite one. One Saturday this guy comes through, we're decently busy but nothing we haven't seen before. The guy rolls down his window and he just reeks of beer. It's 11 AM. First thing he does is start getting rude about how he didn't wash his car well the last time he was through. Now I was in a good mood at the time, so I offered him a couple free air fresheners and told him I would take care of his car myself. I ring up the sale and return with a couple piece token air fresheners. It was at this point his wife, who was in the back seat with their baby, thanked me. The husband losses his shit at her, saying she is not to talk out of turn or unless spoken to first by a man, and most of all don't you the no-nig. I keep my composure, sent him on his way. I then called the cops, told them what happened as far as the alcohol, and gave them the make, model, year, color, the direction the guy turned once he left, and his license plate number. TLDR, me 1. Drunk racist with trash dude 1. 1 DUI that is. Edit. I have more where that came from if you also desire. I apparently made this asshole 65-cent coffee wrong at McDonald's. And he asked me to make it again and started to go off on me. I almost snapped on him. But I instead threw my hands up and told my manager to handle it. The manager talked to him and came back to me and said the guy's a big dig and comes in all the time, and does this just make him another coffee? So I walked to the drive-through window with this asshole fuming in his car next to me, talking to himself about how duck and long this is taking. So I picked up the half-full pot of coffee I made no more than 4 minutes ago and dumped that shit out. I proceeded to brew a whole new pot of coffee. I saw this made him extremely angry, so I went to the window and told him that it's going to be another 5-6 minutes because that last pot was bad. He then peeled out of drive-through like an asshole without a coffee. TLDR. Old people are duck ng asshole. I used to work as a front desk agent at a boutique hotel. A guy who was obviously very full of himself came in with an online reservation that he had booked at a shockingly cheap nightly rate, around $40 night. We usually book rooms for around $160 night. He proceeded to give me a hard time about everything. From telling me he shouldn't have to give me his credit card info since he had prepaid his reservation. We need it for incidental purposes like if he broke the TV and just left and things like that, to telling me yay. I'm pretty sure I can find the elevators. I'm not stupid. And just being an all-around douche-ole. About 10 minutes after checking him in, he came down and demanded that we give him a bigger room with a king bed and a view. Even though he had booked a standard queen bed online. I complied, as we had extra king beds available. 10 minutes later he came down again to complain about the size of the room. He told me, "I'm only giving you one more chance to make me happy," and asked for the general manager. After much arguing between him and my manager, we ended up giving him our nicest suite, 2 rooms, kitchenette, and a great view, and free parking since we had given him trouble. We're located downtown in a big city, so parking is not usually free. He got all this for $40 a night. And get this. He informed us shortly after the ordeal while on his way out to dinner that he was not even going to be in the room for the majority of his stay, as he was visiting friends and would be staying at their home. What the hell? So I made it my personal mission to reset his room keys every time I saw him leave the hotel, which was quite frequently. 3-4 times a day night. It was particularly funny when he came back tired from a night of drinking and had to come all the way down to the front desk to get his keys fixed. Needless to say, he was very frustrated by the end of his stay. I doubt he'll be staying with us again. Sorry for the long post.